All right, what is up, everybody? This is episode 9 of the Golden Dice podcast, and I want to welcome you back. This is your host, Jack, as always, and with me, I've got my trusty sidekick in Tommy.
What's up, Jack? How are you doing today?
Good, man. I'm excited for this episode. Shane is away, so that means we have an opportunity to get rid of him and bring in a guest who I guess you know his credentials through and through.
Today I'm happy that we're going to get to bring on Zach Bunn from Team Covenant. He's the 2016 Star Wars Destiny top 4. He's the Star Wars LCG 2013 world champion, or at least 50% of that team. And he is the owner of Team Covenant, located in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Happy to be on, and thanks for reading down my gaming resume, Tommy.
All-around handsome guy.
Yeah, you failed to list that originally, and I'm happy, or not happy. I see that Shane couldn't be bothered to show up to the episode I'm on, so Shane, where you at?
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Apparently, he's down at the beach and it's raining all this week, so it's just it's what he gets, man. It's what he gets.
That sounds less interesting than what we're doing right now.
Agreed. But Zach, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot going down at Team Covenant, but thanks for taking time out of your day to be here with us. We were supposed to do it last week, but I totally forgot that Solo premiered, and I had an appointment to see it, and you had an appointment to see it. So I'm glad we were able to push back to next week.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that this is the Golden Dice podcast. So we both kind of forgot that Solo was happening. But of course, I'm always happy to talk Destiny, and I've for a long time been a huge fan of community-created content in the gaming community. I think it's a really important part of that whole ecosystem. So always happy to go on shows like this, and ultimately just always happy to get a chance to talk about Destiny.
Yeah, man.
And we're thrilled to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so we could start to dive right into it. We got a few topics prepared here tonight, but I figured we would just start off and talk about Worlds. And I don't know how much you've had a chance to talk about it or dive into it, so you can feel free to, go far in or plug another Team Covenant type content where you went further in a little bit. But how was Worlds for you? Did you have a blast? Was it miserable?
It was miserable. No. I mean, part of what makes these games so awesome is the communities that surround them. So this Worlds was really interesting for me because I basically did the worst I've done at Worlds in ever, which was totally fine because I still had a blast, met a lot of great people, and had a great time. Like you said, I'm from Tulsa, so we have a really strong and consistent Destiny meta. And basically, after several years, I played the Star Wars LCG for a long time, and I played Destiny obviously since the start. But I kept basically getting all the way to the semifinals and then losing. And so going into this year, after 5-6 years of doing that, I just really wanted to change up my methods and kind of how I was preparing and what was going on. And I learned a lot. Definitely, I was better versed in the overarching meta than I had ever been. But I was also, I just wasn't on a deck that I thought was good enough or consistent enough at the time, but it was still the best deck I had for me. And, I played a original Rey deck, and I still haven't posted the list anywhere, but effectively against the 2 or 3 decks I thought were the best in the meta, I thought I had a really good matchup. And then there were a couple that I was weaker against. And then it turns out there's a couple that were just off meta decks that I wasn't expecting that were very good against me. But I knew if I got in, made it to the cut, that I felt pretty good about my chances of winning best 2 out of 3 against pretty much any match. And then ended up actually finishing 3-3. So I did make day 2. But all that said, I learned a lot about the process. The Tulsa meta learned a lot. It was the biggest group of our meta that had gone and competed at the same time. And I'm excited to kind of hone the method and iterate and try it again all next year.
Yeah, it looked like you guys were just going through the grinder in preps, and I think it was the Hyperloops that actually took a picture off Twitter and zoomed in on it and be like, "Oh, what are they playing right now?"
Yeah, there was the Blade Runner zoom and enhance joke that was going on my Twitter
Yeah.
picture, because I'd post like I like in general. Speaking of like photography, I like pictures that have like something in the focus in the foreground and then like a blurry background. And so really consistently, I would like have one of my character dice in focus, and then back behind that, you could see what my other character was. And then if you really squinted, you could maybe see what my opponent was playing and what the game beside them was playing. And one of my meta mates is Eric Wainwright, who had won a couple regionals with his Padawans deck. And so, in like, I think one of the pictures, he was playing an OTK deck. And people were like, oh God, what is this? Like, we're terrified of him playing this deck. But yeah, I thought that was really, really funny.
Yeah, I was dying when I saw that, and then I saw your response. You're like, "Wait, what's it?" Like when they actually took the photo? That was funny.
Yeah, it's like, whoops.
Cool. So I'm glad to hear you had a blast, and I do love the fact that you brought Hanrei. Getting into the game, I played Qui-Gon Rey a lot, and then I eventually at the late or tail end of Spirit of Rebellion, I switched over to Hanrei, and just love that deck kind of ever since. So to see you still kicking it was pretty awesome. I've tried to make it work again in Legacies, like even before that, like kind of when it just came out. But I feel like I was just trying to throw like way too many cards and try to do different things. Were you trying to with Hanrei at all? And of course, I know you said you haven't posted your list, so you're probably planning to do that later at some point. But were you trying to go the same route of like a Sabine deck where you have running interference, Maz's Vault, never tell me the odds or anything like that? Or was it more just ambush weapons on Rey and kind of go from there?
It wasn't the Sabine angle. The two things I was really doing, I think, that were of note, are I switched heavily towards melee dice. Obviously, since the Awakenings Hanrei, we got Vibro Knife, we got Hidden Blaster, we got X8. But what I kept finding was like, effectively, the good decks got too consistent. Whether it's anything Talzin or Yoda or really those or any of the special chaining stuff, really. But basically, every really good deck has some way of just being consistent. Even the deck that won, which was Kylo Anakin, that was a deck I was playing with for a while. But it has two characters that have 50% damage sides, and then also the Kylo ability, and so it's just very consistent. Whereas like Hanrei, right? She has two damage sides. One of them's modified. Han has two damage sides. One of them's a pay side. And then if you look at the ranged upgrade dice, the X8 has a damage side, a plus damage side, and a resource damage side. The DL44 has the same thing. And so what would happen is like back in the day, the game was a little bit slower, and like the idea that you could ambush out and resolve even two or three dice worth of damage without your opponent doing anything was a big deal. But there are other decks that are basically finding ways to do as much unseeable or unmitigable damage, and are doing it more consistently. So I switched to melee because the melee dice are way better, right? So like Ancient Lightsaber has 2 damage sides and a plus side. Heirloom has 3 damage sides. Raised Lightsaber is similar to one of the blasters ultimately, but because a lot of opponents too would go after Rey first because of the shield on Han. And so that also gives you like healing to redeploy from Rey over to Han, and makes the deck a lot more consistent. That was a big innovation late. But the other really big thing is I just really am a huge fan of the card Fair Trade, especially in a meta that has Yoda or that has the Rey Isla that gets an extra money up front. And a lot of people still just aren't even aware of that play. So if I'm going first with Hanrei, obviously ambush upgrade on Rey. If you have Fair Trade in your hand, then you activate Han. He's got 2 resource sides. So at that point, his dice are 50% chance to either get the 2 smash or the resource. And so if you get the 2 smash, you take away their money. If you get the resource, you Fair Trade their money, and now you get 2 more and they're down to 1. And I'm just a huge fan of that play. And, whether it's Sabine or Yoda or Isla Rey, they tend to also like either start turns with 3 money or go into turns with 3 or 4 money. And so even mid-game, a Fair Trade can just like blow out your opponent.
Sure, and even the Talzin decks are running a Chance Cube as their even cost card. There's Chance Cubes in like a ton of decks too. I mean, I think that's a great meta call.
Yeah, and that's where I started. So my first game was against Ray Isla, and I I fair traded that guy on turn one, and it was just not good for him. And then I played a Yoda Hondo in the second round, and it was, I don't remember exactly what happened, but it was the kind of game where like three or four things, little things, kind of go their way. And it wasn't even just like dice. It was just like, so I would have guard, and like ambush action, rolled in, didn't get a melee, re-rolled, didn't get a melee. Then they roll in Hondo and roll double special, and I don't have any control to take off the damage, kind of a situation. And it was the kind of things where, because after the game was over, we were talking, and it was just like that he didn't even recognize were going wrong for me, but they were going wrong for me. So I lost that game, but then I won my next two. So I was at 3-1, and I played my next two were against Yoda Hondo, which I think is a really good match for me. And like even fair trade, when I'm showing a resource, if you resolve 2 Hondo dice, a lot of times I'll pay you 2, and then I'll just take them back with fair trade, which is one of my favorite. They're never ready for that moment. But yeah, so I started 3-1, and then I ended up playing against decks I hadn't tested at all against. And some of it was just weird. And, looking back, it's like I made my fair, especially a game when I went my first loss after my 3-1. If I could go back and change what I was doing, it's like I targeted the wrong character first. I played a control card at the wrong time. So a lot of mistakes there. But it happens. And then in the last game, I just wasn't rolling damage, which happens again from time to time. So put myself in a bad position, and then couldn't make it happen.
That's tough. I mean, but I do love fair trade for that same play, as you mentioned as well. The rollout Han and steal that. And even thinking back, that was a Spirit Rebellion card, I believe, right? Fair trade.
Yeah.
Because I remember running that back with my Hanrei back in those times. But now even more thinking of Hanrei, it's like with Hondo running around and like you said, Yoda and stuff, it just makes for a blowout potential. But I played Hanrei in season 6 of the Free League, and I lost. So I was like, all right, I'm done with you, Hanrei. Retire.
Yeah. Yeah, I think ultimately I certainly got a lot of good tricks, and I think Han's shields got better just because of Vibroknife change. But at the same time, it's like about a week out from Worlds, I played at our weekly league night on a Wednesday here at Covenant Tulsa, and I had a rough night, and I knew at that point that I was probably on the wrong deck, but I also didn't have a better choice. And that's one of the things that we kind of changed about our process historically. Like, let's say Worlds is in May. A lot of times I would pick my deck by like early March, and then I would just play a lot with that deck. Whereas this time we spent the first half of our testing actually playing as the meta. And we were, we had a spreadsheet, and we were getting data on basically like what we thought from the top 10 decks in the meta were the best decks against themselves. And so, like I said, I think I knew the meta better than I'd ever known it, and all the cards and all the tricks and stuff. But at the same time, it gave me less time to actually work on my specific deck. And so that led to where I'm at. But next time I'm just going to do both, play the meta and pick my deck a lot sooner.
It's a tough line to walk. I think we preached about it on here a number of times, Jack. We always felt like it was more important to at least in this meta, because of the power level of all the decks were so similar and so matchup dependent. It was kind of like, if you're really comfortable with a deck that's comparable in power level, it's probably best to just play that, because you'll play that better if you don't have the time to really rep out every deck, but like you did, Zach. But it's so much matchup dependent and making the right meta call, like the Kylo Anakin call for Edwin, and then his last 2 rounds he's facing monocolored decks is just like a perfect storm for that guy.
Yeah, that's super fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, not to take anything away from Edwin, because he plays in northern New Jersey, so I've seen him at tournaments. I don't think I've ever actually played him, but I can vouch that he is a fantastic player. And he won one of the Galactic qualifiers in Philadelphia at PAX Unplugged, so I know he's a great player. But, I mean, that was a really fortunate series of games for him to run into at the right time for that event.
So that's Worlds. I don't think we have to dive too much more into that. Zach, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to meet you. I can be a pretty awkward person at times, and so having not met you before, I didn't come up. And it was funny. I was talking to Tommy about this. He's like, "No, yeah, I'm the same way." But I played against him and our one mutual friend Scott. We'll go up to people a little bit more. I was like, "Yeah, I didn't play Zach, and Scott wasn't there, so I didn't get a chance to meet Zach."
That's funny. Well, next time we're at the same event, you have to say something.
Yeah. So Team Covenant had some pretty spicy stuff coming out in the past few days. You posted an interview with Jeremy where you guys were playing Destiny. And was that taken at Worlds?
Yeah, we filmed that at Worlds.
Yeah, I figured that would have been the best chance for you guys to do that, as Tulsa's not too bad, but it's not like it's right around the corner to Roseville, Minnesota.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a drive to get that interview.
Yeah. It's funny, though, because our buddy Joe is the guy who had that Chance Cube issue at Worlds. And then I watched your video. I was like, see, Joe, don't feel bad. Jeremy didn't catch Zach either. It's fine. It happens.
Yeah. He let me, for those listening that maybe haven't seen the game, I did an interview with Jeremy where we were obviously playing on camera and we had some spoilers, but I was playing Thrawn Townsend and I played a Chance Cube, and I don't think I ever paid to activate it. But I also obviously was playing a game and interviewing. So it was just a funny little thing. It didn't help anyway. Spoiler alert. I lost pretty hard, but it was pretty cool. We're always experimenting with different ways of doing things, or more interesting or more meaningful or more, enjoyable ways to create content. So one of the things we've been wanting to explore for a while is actually like playing a game with the designer while we're talking about the game. Cause it just gives you so many chances to ask relevant questions to what's in front of you. And also provides just, you can just watch a game of Destiny and kind of get a behind the scenes look at Destiny and also get some previews. It's pretty cool. So the community reaction to that video so far has been great. It's really positive. So that's encouraging and makes us want to make a lot more of that kind of content. So if you've been leaving positive comments, not necessarily you guys, but anyone listening, appreciate that quite a bit.
Yeah, I would definitely check it out. Great video, great work. And you had plenty on your mind, interviewing, playing a game, and it was fantastic. I loved it. Keep that up.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, definitely agree. And it was awesome to see Jeremy in that light too. Jeremy, I got a chance to talk to him a few times at Worlds, and he's just a great guy. So really well done with that. But we can talk a little bit about the spoilers that came out from that. So Hero Red is getting some love, and it's kind of funny that we're talking about him on the episode that Shane isn't here, because he's like Red Hero through and through.
That's what he gets.
That's what he gets for going down the shore.
He's stiff Zach. Forget that guy.
Yeah, agreed.
That's funny.
But the first one we got is we could start off with the character who's also a leader, who's also a trooper. Clone Captain Rex. He's from the Clone Wars series. Super excited about him. He has 11 health. He's Red Hero. His points are 11 and 14 for Elite. He has a 1 range, 2 range, 2 indirect, 1 focus, 1 resource, blank. And his character text says, before you activate this character, you may spend 1 resource or spot a clone trooper to take control of the battlefield. So this makes me excited, and it's interesting to see, like, immediately looking at his dice, like, just what pops into my mind is Ayla Secura, which she's essentially the same thing, but melee. And then instead of the focus, she has a special, which is a little bit better because you get to turn an opponent's die also with it. But he has 1 more point of health, and then it'll be interesting to see how good his ability is, because there's a lot of red cards that require the battlefield, like defensive position, which could arguably be one of the biggest blowout cards, removing all dice with a value of 2 or higher if you control the battlefield. And then there's also Dug In. Yeah, you spend 1 and you get 3 shields distributed as you wish, but you need the battlefield. And then also there's even like a single die removal with Superior Position, I believe it is, where it's just if you control the battlefield, remove an opponent's die for 1 resource. So there's a lot of good stuff that can happen with the battlefield in red. And so his ability, being able to essentially have the battlefield every turn, and for free if you have a clone trooper with you, seems really, really good. And I think having a good character of that 14 slot for Red Hero, I think that's a really, really good spot for them to be in.
Sure. And I think, obviously, I mean, like you're saying, the more cards we get that rely on having the battlefield, the more important that ability could become. And even like his ability references the clone, like a clone trooper, and they get better if you control the battlefield, right? So it's a natural little synergy. And I think one thing I've been post Worlds kind of experimenting with quite a bit is trilogies. And me and Steven actually played Trilogies at Adepticon a few months ago. But it's the kind of like, he's the kind of sneaky character to me that like right now in like full blown constructed, you may or may not be excited about him. And I think his relevance really depends on the battlefields we get that have an ability while you control them, and also the abilities we get that matter for the battlefield. But 11-14 is a low enough point cost that he's going to fit into a lot of lists. And I think in Trilogies in particular, he could be a beast. And I'm anxiously excited about the day that we actually hit rotation and those first 3 sets go away, because it's like everything we know right now except for a set. And so when I compare him to the characters we have in Legacies, I think he's actually really quite strong. So I hope that's the case, because I don't know if either of you watch the Clone Wars, but I'm a huge Captain Rex fan. He's hilarious. So I'd like to see him hit the table more often than not.
Absolutely. We're huge Clone Wars and Rebels and pretty much any Star Wars content we can get our hands on. I'm a little behind on books, but we consume everything. And Rex is hilarious. I'm actually kind of interested about playing him at 1 die at 11 points. I mean, his die is fine, but that ability and that health pool of 11 for 11 points is kind of alluring to me. I don't know exactly what the character spread is, but that was the first thing I was thinking of when I saw this character.
Sure. I mean, his die is not like the most exciting die we've ever seen, but it's solid enough, right? If you're running him and you have 3 extra points, he's a solid addition. But I think most people are just excited to finally have him in the game.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've actually started rewatching Clone Wars since I saw Solo, and so just seeing him on the big screen, and then to see that, or not the big screen, but on my my TV screen.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second, was he in Solo? Did I miss something?
No, you did not. You didn't miss anything. I talk weird sometimes.
That's
all the time.
I think we all do.
If you think that's weird, what if Shane was here?
Is the quote is 10, right? We need to mention the fact that Shane's not here 10 times. That way he feels bad about it.
Yeah, what are we at? Like
Wait,
30?
who's not here? Shane? Oh, I didn't notice because I was having a good time.
Oh, sick burn. Sick burn.
Oh.
It's my little brother. I'm allowed to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
But what was I even going to say? What was I trying to say about Rex? Oh, I'm rewatching Clone Wars, and it's just cool to see him in the game now.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. One of the things Jeremy said, we interviewed him. I guess it was in November, and whatever video went. I mean, I think our video there went up in like December or January. But one of the things he was talking about then that I'm maybe most excited about that he's ever said is that he's a really big believer in basically making heroes and villains feel different, and then also making each color feel different. And so I think we're starting to see that kind of theme play out, where even like Captain Rex and Red being very oriented towards like taking extra actions, and also claiming like having the battlefield, and like they're obviously the soldiers, so having the battlefield should matter more to them. So I wouldn't be surprised, because we also got that General Grievous preview when they first announced Way of the Force. And it seems like they're building on these ideas of those kind of color differences and hero villain differences, and your soldiers should definitely care about the battlefield more than like, I don't know, a Jedi. So I think that's cool to see, and I won't be surprised if we get more cards that are like defensive position, or even just the reality of a powerful like while you control this battlefield. On a battlefield could be enough to make his ability worth every point you pay for him.
I mean, what's that one battlefield that gives all your non-uniques Guardian? I mean, that's even while you control it. That's pretty good with Rex right now. I mean, you can consistently keep him on the table a lot longer, and you have the leeway to play non-redeploy upgrades on him a little more sustainably than you normally would if somebody didn't have Guardian. If you can continuously take that battlefield, that's one that came to mind for me. I mean, obviously the Bendu is an interesting one, Jack, if you want to transition into that.
Yeah, I guess I can leave my final thought for that later. We can transition to Bendu. Bendu's Lair, it is a new battlefield, and it is the first battlefield with a die on it. And I'll read the die. It is a 1 ranged, 2 indirect, a 1 focus, a 2 shield, so Shane's happy with that, a resource, and a blank. And then its text reads, power action, roll this die into your pool. And below that, it says, after you take control of this battlefield, remove its die. So what's interesting about this, obviously, it's, a battlefield with a die, which is something we haven't seen before. And then there's an interesting aspect of, you want to be quick to claim it, but then, if your power action rolling out resolving this die, if it doesn't mix with your dice symbols, it could really set you back 2 actions. What I like about it, and interesting to note too, is that the weird dynamic of Rex with this also. Because, Rex can take it back and give it to you, and then you could roll it out and resolve it, so you can guarantee almost every time that this dice is yours. But if your opponent rolls it out, uses the power action, and you move it over to you, the die is removed, but the power action, token, the power action's still been used this round, so you can't actually just take it with Rex and then use it again for yourself. Once a card has, already exhausted its power action this round, you can't use it again, which I think is a good thing. I mean, it kind of stinks, of course, in this situation if you're the Rex player, but I think overall for the game, with more stuff like this coming out, it could get really weird. So I just kind of like that they have that rule already down and in the rules reference guide already. But just having it down on a battlefield excites me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really cool direction for them to go with the battlefield because, it could be something as simple as a turret kind of vibe where it's a gun. And it's whoever is controlling this battlefield is going to get to use the turrets or the explosives or the whatever. And just that's just another wrinkle to the game that makes it more interesting. And again, it makes the cards that red, right? If they care a lot about the battlefield, giving battlefields that have dice is a great way to reward whatever they're doing that allows them to be good with the battlefield.
The one with the die thing is bizarre though. I feel like Rex controlling the battlefield or being able to take the battlefield afterwards and removing the die is almost offensive and nullifies the upside to that. It might be, I feel like you get more value out of a static effect like the Guardian, or the first vehicle you play each round is reduced by 1. If you think about it from that standpoint, and you have you're able to recoup 1 resource every turn just by activating Rex, taking the battlefield, and then, presumably you have a vehicle in your hand each turn. If you're playing a vehicle support deck, you could, basically go into every turn with 3 resources, as long as you can spot a clone trooper.
Sure. That's pretty powerful, right? And even the reality of if you have to pay the 1 with his ability because your clone trooper is dead to get it back, you still break even, and now you control the battlefield for other cards that want you to control the battlefield.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm excited and I think Bendu is a great, hilariously thematic first choice.
Didn't even think of him in the discussion for it when they announced the die would be on a battlefield, but they definitely hit it out of the park with that one. I love that choice.
Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. And of course, the other card that was previewed was the Hero Red Plot. That was 3 points, and it's got that constant ability to either exhaust to add a resource to it or exhaust to take the resources from it, which is crazy. Or, no, it's exhaust to put a resource on it, and then it does extra damage for that, right?
Here, I'll just read the text on it. It's called Long-Term Plan, and then it's a 3-point red hero plot. And the action on it, or it has an action, it says exhaust this plot to place 1 resource on it, or to resolve 1 of your dice, increasing its value by the number of resources on this plot.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I remember asking Jeremy about it in the interview where it's because another thing he said in our interview from 5 or 6 months ago was he wants the games to take more turns. And so the longer the game goes on, the more crazy that plot potentially gets, right? If you get turn 5 and that's a +5 on, any damage side, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking wingman, hit and run, and then retreat or something along those lines. Get in, get out. Make this exhaust this, put a resource on it. If you could just advance the game by 1 extra round, maybe 2, you're really going to get some money out of this long-term plan. But without that, I think in the current iteration of the game, I have a hard time seeing, because of the speed and the number of rounds that games are going on average. I have a hard time visualizing how to use this without abusing retreat in some way.
Sure.
Yeah, a retreat or hyperspace jump, round where you get to do that, can definitely extend the game and expand it a few more rounds. But it was funny when I first read this, I did a quick read, and I thought for a second you had to pay your own resource to put it on there, and I was like, that seems awful. Why would I ever want to do that? But yeah, you're actually taking a resource, from the outside, not the 2 that you get every round or any that are in play. You're taking it from the set aside zone and putting it on there. So it's not actually you paying it. And I think an important distinction is probably because of characters like the new Finn, where he could just move damage from himself or any card to any card, really. Which, if you were to place damage on this or anything like that, I think Finn 2 could be pretty broken. So that's probably why they use resources rather than saying damage or anything like they have on previous cards. I think it was Main Plaza. You could either move damage to it or move all the damage to an opponent's character. But Finn 2, if you could just put damage on this and then use it next round, that could be you could see this card escalate very quickly. But it having resources puts a little bit of a cap on it. And I think even if you just get this to have 2 resources and even 3, I don't know if I would go beyond 3, but all those are still a really good spot to increase even your 2 or 3 damage sides by and smack them for 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think the realistic application here is going to be like a 2 or a 3, probably a 2, because once you get to 2, if you have a 2 damage that you turn into a 4, that's pretty good. And the next round you can do the same thing, and you actually probably get 2 or 3 uses out of it. So I'm mainly excited just to see them explore this kind of space that we haven't seen them explore before, which is a hero and a color of a plot that kind of does something a little more powerful. But over time, I could easily see, plots very much shaping how these different colors and hero villains play, because they get access to some of these like just crazy abilities. So I'll be curious to see where they go at this point.
Yeah, this is their first hero or villain plot. Built to Last was the first color one, but that's blue neutral, I believe, and this is hero red. So yeah, it's exciting space to see that explored. But that just about does it for the spoilers that you guys had. And of course, again, if anybody wants to watch that interview with Jeremy, you can head over to Team Covenant's YouTube page or their Facebook, and you'll be able to find it there as well. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we start to get into the, meat and bones of this podcast?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Our big topic, what we really want to get into, and Zach, one reason we brought you on is because we think you do a great job at this. But one of the biggest issues right now in Destiny, and what's talked about a lot, is how to grow a community at your local game store. And you've done a great job at Team Covenant with that, and especially coming up, we can even talk about your Covenant Masters, which looks like such a great idea and great event that people are probably even going to fly in for that, which I wish I would be able to, because it really does seem like a blast. But I guess just how would you even say that your community is in Tulsa? Is it? You mentioned earlier you had a pretty good group of testers for Destiny, but say your weekly Destiny tournament, how many people do you often get out?
Last night's a pretty good example. We had 20 plus hanging out playing Destiny last night at League Night. That's pretty normal for us. Like last week, I think there were our League Night starts at like 6:30 p.m. And there were like, I think 12 people drafting and like 14 or 15 people playing Constructed. And then there were more people drafting after that. So I don't know what that means in terms of like everyone else's groups in meta, but we're pretty consistently at the like 20 plus range.
Hang on, I'm going to go let my wife know we're moving to Tulsa. Hang on, I'll be right back.
I thought you were seriously going to have us hang on. I was like, all right, cool.
I was literally about to write down the time so I could edit out the break we would just have to take. Tommy going away.
Funny. Well, you're welcome. You guys would be more than welcome in Tulsa. It's a really cool city, and we have a pretty decent Destiny community. So you can join us on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, that seems
That's
awesome.
tempting.
Yeah.
Oh man, if I oof. See, I'm leaning on the in-laws as babysitters right now. Between her parents, my parents, I need those babysitters right now.
Yeah.
Now that you're obviously at a big spot right now, but how did you start out with Destiny? Like, back in, was it demoed in 2016, I believe?
So they demoed it at Gen Con 2016, and then it came out in like December of that year. And then Spirit of Rebellion came out in May of that year, and then so on and so forth after that. But I mean, it's interesting because people ask us this a lot, and I know there are some metas right now that are kind of over the past couple of months have been kind of going through somewhat of like a withdrawal or whatever, because we got Legacies in January, and then like we still don't even know when Way of the Force is coming out, and it's basically June. So And we had regional season, and probably more important than anything, we had that 3 or 4 month period where like Poe, Maz, and Nines were just like wreaking havoc on the meta. Whereas like right now the meta is pretty cool because there's a lot of different decks that are good, and every deck kind of has a weakness or a weak match, and then there's a bunch of decks that are on the periphery. But we talk a lot. We do a weekly podcast called the Covenant Cast, and over the past year, we've talked a whole lot about building community and welcoming players and whatnot. And I think the hard part is that a lot of people who are trying to build these communities aren't actually the stores themselves. It's players in the community, and so that these are people who have other jobs and kids and commitments and lives that go on and things that come up, and so. A lot of the stuff that I can even possibly recommend is tough for a lot of people for those reasons, right? We're very fortunate that 11 years into the experiment of Team Covenant, we're at a point where we can all do this full time and make a living at it and spend all our energy on trying to make it as easy as possible for people to get into the gaming community and to stay involved in it. So, I think we're in kind of a unique position, but ultimately, right, it's a lot of effort has gone into consistent event support, league nights, welcoming events, promotions to get people into the game and making sure that people stay interested and keeping it fresh. Even as an example, we, back as soon as basically Spirit of Rebellion came out, that's the first time that consistently there was just kind of product available. And there was a reprint of Awakenings and stuff. We actually made up our own draft format with Spirit of Rebellion. We tested it for the first time, like in a large way, at Destiny Weekend that we hosted back at last May. And because we've always believed that draft is a fundamental part of how a collectible game grows the community and maintains the community, because it's just a really accessible format. If you play draft, you don't really have to own everything. You don't have to build a deck beforehand. If you don't know the meta or know all the cards, it's fine. And so we kind of came up with our own format, and I think that was really instrumental in our community being as vibrant and big as it is. Because the other thing is that the 20 people aren't always the same. Like, it's not like we have just 20 people, right? There just happens to be 20, 25, 30 that show up on a weekly basis of rotating cast or whatever. So for us, we have an entire league system, and we use the like prize kits that FFG sends as part of our league, and it's very focused on participation and not on winning. And then we host a ton of events that are geared towards new players and welcoming new players. Before Trilogies was even a format, we were hosting limited set events like a Legacies only or starters. We did a 2-player starter tournament. We did a ton of drafts, and we actually right now for the past couple of months have had a rivals promotion going on where we literally give people their first set of rivals the first time they draft, trying to make it as easy and basically effortless to get into a draft or into this game as possible. And then it's, we have a great community too. I think we really encourage players to be kind to each other and be nice. And I think a big part of that is that we don't just incentivize winning. So it's never feels cutthroat. We definitely have tournaments and we have prizes and stuff, but at the same time, it's like most of the best stuff you get for being an active part of the community. And so on that note, right, it's like there's a lot of elements of that are tough for like a player-led or effort to like grow a community. But consistent events, welcoming events, making sure your community is welcoming people. And like one of my favorite things to see, and this happens a lot because like I said, we host a lot of drafts. A lot of the veteran players, when they draft, after it's over, they usually will basically keep their legendaries that they need, and then they'll hand the rest of the cards they drafted to the newest player at the table. And so we've had a ton of players who will get in on a free rival set, draft some cards, get handed a bunch of stacks of cards, and 3 or 4 weeks in, they have enough to start building decks, and then they kind of roll and become an active part of the community. And it's kind of a cool circle of what happens. But that's my initial quick answer. I don't know if you guys have specifics or questions or thoughts on that.
I think it is a unique situation in the sense that a lot of the community building is coming from just a player who's, like you said, has a full-time job or other family time commitments otherwise. But I really like what you guys do in an effort to create a community or an event that doesn't feel cutthroat or hostile as a new player coming in. That can really put a negative taste in someone's mouth. And you want, like, I always want to think about how can we as players just make sure that we're not the reason that people aren't coming back. I think that we want to be the reason that people do come back. We don't want to push people away and make people feel alienated. We want to be welcoming, and we want to make sure that when we play someone, they don't have a negative play experience. If I lose, I want to make sure that, I'm not pouting or blaming my dice or telling them that they rolled great. Or if I win, conversely, I want to help the player out, or I don't want to nitpick everything they did, but I want to, encourage them. And like you said, they always see new players receiving cards from your veterans, whether it's the commons, uncommons, rares that they don't need. I think that's a big part. It's the little things that can really add up and create a good community. The difficult part might actually be just getting the people there in the first place. And I think that the draft format and as an extension of that, the limited format really is the way to go when trying to build an event oriented toward new players.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of, you mentioned the Covenant Masters, which is basically, like I said, we've always believed in the draft format. The reason we exist is literally, we grew up in the tabletop gaming industry or as a part of it, and it is fundamentally about making it as easy as possible for new people to get into the tabletop gaming community, and for people that are already in it as easy as possible to keep participating in it and to stay involved. And so the draft format, like I said, is just super accessible. And so it doesn't have any official events. There's not really anyone talking about it. There's not any support. And like for us, it's a fundamental fabric of building our community. So, and again, we're in a unique position, and we can do things that a lot of communities or players or podcasts or stores can't do. So that's also where Covenant Masters comes from, where it's like, we can support this format. We can show the world that this is a legitimate thing, and we can show the world what happens when you actually support this format. And, anyone that's out there trying to build community, I highly recommend draft. I think it's the way to go. And the other part of that is, even with the draft series, like you were saying, we're structuring, there's definitely good things for winning, right? Like if you get top 6, you qualify for the championship, which is going to be insane. And it's huge value to qualify. But at the same time, everyone that shows up, right, is getting a custom deck box and custom tokens that you only get at this event. And you don't get that for winning necessarily. You just get it for participating. And so going back to our league system, I think that's a big part of it, is like, we aren't all just encouraging people to win, because there's people that want to be competitive and want to test for worlds. I'm in that boat, and they want to win. And we want to encourage people to be excellent and to achieve in that kind of way. But at the same time, right, it's like most people aren't cutthroat, aren't looking to win a world title, aren't looking to grind out games. They're just wanting to play a Star Wars game and have fun and meet people. And, that's, to me, the best part of tabletop games is the people. That's why I was talking about worlds earlier. It's hard to have a bad time. I could lose every game and probably still really enjoy myself, because I meet a lot of great people and I get to hang out afterwards with those great people. And so that's it's funny, actually. We were hosting a regional back in February, and some of my friends regionally, right, that come up from Texas or come in for big events, showed up at the end of our Friday night flight, and we just hung out for the next couple hours and drafted. And then after the store closed, we went to IHOP and had some coffee and talked, about life and Destiny and stuff. The next day they did their flight, and then we did the top cut. And then we, as we were all eliminated, we started drafting, and every night there were 15 or 20 of us just hanging out drafting. And then we go hang out after. And it was like, man, how cool would it be if we just did that all weekend? And that's where Covenant Masters ultimately comes from. But locally, it's been pretty cool, because even some of the newer players, right, like they don't have enough for Constructed quite yet, but they're pretty excited because they feel like they're actually qualified to play in a tournament.
That's awesome. On top of being able to host all those events and getting new players in, like the fact that you have a community that's so willing at times to draft. Because even speaking from my own personal experience, like I've done, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 Legacies drafts, which isn't anything too crazy. But even like after the third one, like so the 4th, 5th, and 6th one, I was starting to almost feel a little burn out from the sense that like it's still a fun format. I enjoy every second of playing it, but it is like a higher buy-in. It's 20 or 25. It might be. I don't exactly remember like what our store would charge. But even if you're playing with friends and just splitting a box, it could still run you around 15 or so. Whereas a weekly tournament could be 5 or 10, depending on what store you're at. But like the fact that you have people that are still so willing to draft, and the fact that you guys also put this interesting like spin on it, I think makes it just so much more like tempting to get into and really just like hone your skills in that too. Like you said, everybody gets something for walking in the door and paying for the ticket, but it's also a little bit of reward if you actually, because there's a skill to drafting and learning how to do that and honing your skills in that area. It just seems like an absolute blast of an event, and just to have access to to something like that.
Sure. And I think that's, part of the reality, right? It's a kind of an ecosystem, but if there aren't going to be big events and there's not going to be a big support for draft, then it's a lot less interesting for the veteran players to keep drafting and try to build that skill. And we know how important draft is, even locally and regionally, to continue getting people into this community. And so offering that kind of support is, I think, critical. And, giving people a reason to practice Legacies draft last week, because like I, up through Legacies, have been buying basically 2 Saga sets every time a set comes out. And so I get 4 of every common, uncommon, and rare, 2 of every legendary. And so I don't need to draft, really. Like, I don't need the cards. This next set, I'm planning on buying 1 Saga set and then basically drafting for the rest of my stuff that I want. But yeah, I mean, I think it's when we have this series, it's like the community's ready and willing to play more draft because they want to get ready and they all want to do well at this event, right? And the flip side of that too is, again, like going back to our league. So basically, we have a league system where you earn points anytime you play Destiny in our store, if you're a member of the league, right? And then if you play on league night, which is Wednesday night for us, you earn extra points. And then if you play in a tournament, you actually get even extra points. So the thing about that is, like, when we have a draft, not only do you get the draft stuff, but you actually earn quite a bit of league points. And league points you can trade in for alt arts. We also do like basically custom versions of our Saga tokens. Like I have the ones that people comment on the most, or I have some like mahogany resource tokens from our Saga token set. And that was a league prize for a while. Like, and it was a lot of points to get. So like, it's just incentivizing people to do the things that are going to help build community, and they get it too, right? We've talked to them about it, and we talk about it every week when people are hanging out. And the reality of like everyone that plays Destiny here loves the fact that last night there were 20 people here playing Destiny, and so that's worth a lot to everybody. Like that's a huge benefit. Like you guys were talking about moving to Tulsa, slightly jokingly, but at the same time, everyone kind of understands how this works, and it's really cool to see. And the community for tabletop has always been, as good as the games have been, the community has always been the thing that really makes it or breaks it. And I'm super happy that we have such a great Destiny community here in Tulsa.
And that league really interests me. That sounds like an awesome idea. About how many people would you say like are currently registered in the Destiny League?
I'd probably say close to 50 are on the list. I don't actively manage that part of, I mean, I'm not looking at that granular of data on a daily basis, but we have a ton of Destiny players. We actually, on our website, there's a visit page, which is our local page, and it actually links to our league page as well, which fully breaks down how we run our league and what the prizes are, and all that kind of stuff. And another thing we do too is, because we usually host like store championships and regionals, and they always send like TO prizes. So like the TO prizes, we always just put into the league, and you can earn those through points. And we try to make a lot of like cool stuff that people actually want to add to that. But that, again, like that's a big focus of ours, and we're focused. We're a very weird store in terms of like what other stores are typically doing. So we're able to put a lot of effort behind games like Destiny or X-Wing or any of the games we're really focused on.
That's so cool. I love that. I love the league. Like, I've heard of leagues before, but I feel like you're executing it at a much higher level than the ones I've heard of.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough, like I said, because like if you're not the actual store, to consistently host events and have a league with ongoing support and have people, staff that like know what's going on with the game and all that kind of stuff, right? Like we sell few enough games that everyone that works here is very familiar with all the games and knows all the news and what's going on and can have conversations about it and can teach people. And we're very focused, but like that's why I said we're weird, is because we do things a little bit differently. And I particularly get the struggle of the players who are trying to build the communities, because I don't think we've always felt like the store should be doing more if they want those communities to be in their store. And so that's what we're doing. But I get the situations where like it doesn't make sense for a store to really go out and support it, and then a player has to kind of do it. And that, I've heard so many stories of people who do run that very regularly, and then like they have a baby or they have to move or something goes on, and then all of a sudden there's a vacuum of no one's really there to take on the mantle of hosting and organizing that community, and so it kind of falls apart.
And now I very much agree with that, and I've kind of seen it even within our own local meta in New Jersey. Like we have a lot of good players, but the stores really haven't wanted to do too much aside from just hosting a weekly and just having a store championship. And they were too small for regionals, so store championship might be the maximum they get, which of course is fine. That's not something you could change. But I guess if somebody wanted to start changing something at their local, what do you think might be the first few steps you should try and do? Should it be like a new player event, or would you recommend starting a league? Or like basically if somebody, they go to one every week, they get maybe 8 to 10 people on a weekly basis, which is still pretty good, but they're looking to expand on that more and get it up into the 20s like you might have, like what just might be the next few steps you would recommend for that person?
I mean, I think the most important thing is having a consistent night of the week where people are hanging out and playing. Because it's really important to know when you're going to take the time to drive 10, 15, 20 minutes to a store, have your deck ready and show up and dedicate 3 or 4 hours of your life to doing something, that it's going to be worth your time. And so that's usually step one for anyone that's going to have any kind of meta at all. And then beyond that, I think it's making sure that you're very welcoming. And I think having events that are welcoming and encouraging, people to bring people, because that's where I think something like draft comes in, where over time you do this long enough and you hear a lot of stories from different people, and like the number of people that won't go to a regional or a store championship because they don't feel like they're at that level yet, even though if they went, they would probably have a great time and learn a whole bunch about Destiny and meet a whole lot of great people. And so that's what even like we used to several years ago, our weekly league nights were actually weekly tournaments, right? We'd have a $5 tournament. And what we found is just that even just calling it a tournament made a lot of people not want to show up because they didn't feel like they're ready for a tournament. And so we totally pivoted that into, like Wednesday night is Star Wars League night. And it's like totally free. You come hang out, you play Destiny, you play whatever game you want. And it's completely free. And then if you want to pay to be a member of the league, then all your games count for points, and that's how you start earning stuff. But we retooled the whole system to be very new person friendly. And if you get ingrained in these communities long enough, you kind of forget what it's like to be a new person. But even the name tournament implies certain things that I think a lot of people take for granted. So, I think having a league night and having, it can be whatever you want it to be, but also making sure that there are things like draft happening that a new person will feel comfortable doing and will let them, start learning and start building a collection. And also, I think part of what makes draft, again, just keep harping on draft over and over again, part of what makes it so effective is that it is by its nature a more social format than something like Constructed, which is, even in Constructed, right, you play against the one person, and you may or may not know them, and if you don't, you might not talk too much, and it's kind of the situation. But when you're drafting, it's like there's 6 people at a table sitting around a table having to interact with each other, and they're not playing a game yet. So you have this nice 15, 20-minute warm-up period where you're just kind of like, hey, how's it going? Like, I'm Zach. And you kind of talk to each other and you're just interacting. And so that, I think if you have 10 people, I would highly encourage, if you have 8 to 10 people showing up on a regular basis, drafting when and where possible. And obviously, if no one wants to draft and no new players show up, you can just play constructed instead. But at the same time, like if you can get one new player in and they can draft, and then you give them all the commons, uncommons, and rares, I think that will very quickly lead to getting to 15, 20 people. And I think a lot of people will be surprised at how fast they can get there.
Yeah, it's so much more accessible, and I really like that pointing out and highlighting that fact that it's a social experience when you're sitting around, and it's almost like that warm up, break the ice period where you can kind of just get a feel for the group, and as a veteran player, we're responsible for making that a little bit more welcoming, a little bit warmer, and less intimidating for people. I think that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, I totally agree, obviously.
That's awesome. I really love hearing, what you've kind of been talking. I've probably on the same page as Tommy, where I've heard about leagues, but I don't really know the application of them, or really what the idea of is that. So hearing you expand on that kind of wants me to turn around and approach my local game store and see if we can get something similar to that format going. Obviously, it's something like the Covenant Masters would be extremely hard for, just a general local store to pull off, but just starting somewhere and trying to get people out, and like you said, trying to just get people through the door is one of the hardest things that you can even do. But once they're there, it then becomes our job. A store can promote everything, get all these people in, but if they come into an environment where they don't feel welcome or they feel weird about things, it's less likely they're going to return. I think just having those players in your store is key to developing a great community there. And as you mentioned, like draft, if you have all the legendaries and you have all the rares and all the uncommons, just, do you really need them? I mean, if you can take them and sell them, of course, and kind of get your money back. And, if that's something that you need to do to continue playing the game, I totally get that. But, if you're in a spot where you can just pass up on all the rares and just take that one legendary you need, I think that would just do a lot more for everybody in the draft. And even when I play against people who I know have mostly everything, I still only take what I might need. I think when the draft kits came out, our first draft, we did one at the store. I think it was Awakenings, but then we did one at our friend Joe's house, and it was, believe it was Empire at War, because I had Hera in my team, and I remember that, and it was just the only thing I needed was a Grand Inquisitor's lightsaber, which I don't even really care to have, but it was the only legendary I didn't have, so I took that, and some other of we had a few new people, but we had people like Tommy and Scott and Joe who all have their legendaries that they need. But it just makes for a better environment. And we even had drafted our store like a month ago, and a new player, Flockton, who's one of our friends now. He was Shane's friend, but now, I've gotten the chance to meet him. But he came in. I actually had an awful night, and I was just like, dude, you could take. It was a standard night, so you got packs for where you placed. And I was like, dude, just take my 2 or 3 packs, because ultimately, I didn't really need them. And he ended up pulling the malls and stuff. So that was just got him really excited. He felt bad. He was trying to give it back to me. I was like, no, dude, just keep it. But, that story to him and that experience was just really welcoming for him. So now it's every Monday he's there. He's playing in those local tournaments.
He's like your number one fan, Jack. I played him last week, and he rolled up and unleashed his golden dice playmat. And I was like, wow, I guess I need to get one of those. It was embarrassing.
Yeah, man, you got to step up your game. I got one. Flockton's got one. Dude, even our boy Alan Preston's got one. You and Shane are slacking.
My gosh. I don't play enough at this point right now with the baby and all that'll be my Father's Day gift.
Yeah, there you go. I think even who's the next one to get one ever pay? I think Mike Eskelson is going to be the next one to get the playmat. But either way, just being open as a community and just really just being about the experience, like in game is so important too. And at Worlds, like every opponent I played, I gave an alt art card of Han we did. It was just like everybody was so, super nice and thankful of that we as a podcast would kind of put our money into that and hand it out. And I feel like you guys are doing a great job of just getting items and things into people's hands so they're walking away happy, even if they go, and whatever it might be.
Hopefully, we'll see what the numbers work out. Technically, there's 9 rounds. So if you go 0-9, we might have to get something super special for that person, because that's a rough day.
Yeah. And it's not like it's not 0-9 in a standard where it's like, it's all over. It's 9 rounds is still a lot, but it's over quicker than 9 rounds of draft with 3 drafts in there, right?
Yeah, so you basically draft, play 3 rounds, draft, play 3 rounds, draft, play 3 rounds, and then cut to top 6 for another draft.
Yeah, if I went 0-9 after that day, I think need a long, hard look in the mirror. Not even disappointed in it, just of how how long it went to go 0-9.
The crazy part about that though is like I think I could probably go 0-9 at a draft event like that and probably still have a
Yep.
remarkably good time. Especially like if I'm 0-6, I'm drafting with other people that are 0-6. That has to be the funnest table in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. That must be all laughter and just joy of just shenanigans going on in the games. It must be great.
Yeah, and I was one of the things I was disappointed in myself at that I didn't get a chance to draft at Worlds. I don't know if you did that at all, Zach. Did you get a chance to do pods of that?
Yeah, I actually was able to get a couple pods in and score some points so I could get that Spot Glass Ewok Village.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Oh, that's my battlefield. I love that one.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. As a villain, I really don't like fields.
I know Tommy's been rocking that in his Tarkin Seven Sister deck for forever, but yeah, I was able to just do standard ones, which was fun. I think I did one trilogy one, but I didn't do any draft. Kind of wish I took the time to do that because at the end of Saturday, I think it was, I did like 2 pods and I was like, all right, I'm done. I can't play any more standard. I have to play on Sunday.
Sure, I totally understand that.
Cool. Well, I think a lot of that covered and gave some people a really good stepping stone kind of into if they're looking to build their local community, if they're even if they're just a weekly attender and don't own the store as me and Tommy are, but you're giving great advice for anybody to just kind of be able to step up and maybe even start talking to their stores about getting them involved and getting them hosting. So that way there's more support, in case, like you mentioned, somebody has a kid or moves away, that the whole support system doesn't fall out. But before we move on, and I guess we have one more final topic, but do you have any other closing thoughts or anything about, starting and building local communities, about player expectations and how we can contribute to a healthy community?
Oh man, I'm sure I could probably go on for days. This is something we've been working on for years, but ultimately it just comes down to making sure it's accessible and welcoming. And most people in the Destiny community are great, so that's not really that big of a problem. And I think between that and just being consistent and showing up on the night that you're planning on playing is about the best you can do. And then hope sets keep coming out. Crossing my fingers for Way of the Force at this point. Yeah,
hopefully that comes out soon. But it was funny. I think once you announced the Covenant Masters, a lot of people were like, does Team Covenant know something that we don't? Like, what is their date?
Yeah, I mean, I wish. Covenant Masters is something we've been planning for a while. And ultimately, we would, of course, love to have a new set come out for that event. But we're as clueless as everyone else. And ultimately, at this point, I just hope that the delay in Way of the Force isn't doesn't cascade down into the other sets.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like a great event. I would love to be able to make it out there for that, but flying out for Worlds and taking a week off for that, not able to do that again.
Yeah,
that'd be a weekend, but
there'll be plenty more qualifiers over the next several months. So if you end up making your way out here, let me know and we'll do some streams or something.
Awesome. That sounds perfect. Tommy, I think, is already packing his bags. Got a suitcase out and everything.
Don't forget the baby, Nicole.
Cool. I guess our last topic we can quickly just skim over is national prizes. We didn't get a chance because we didn't do a podcast last week to talk about it. But yeah, national prizes look pretty awesome. They are doing for top 64. They're doing alt art of Luke and Boba Fett, and that is the second edition of Luke, the unlikely hero, the one from the starter. So both starter characters, I like it a lot. It's Luke on Hoth in his airspeeder outfit, and Boba Fett looks like he's got like a little hologram in his hand with, it looks like Jabba's little barge on there. I can't really tell exactly what it is, but looks really cool. Going into top 32, you got preemptive strike and fortify, full arts. Top 16 is shield tokens. I like they're mixing it up, and they are like stormtrooper helmets. Top 8 is Boba, but in his deadly position. And then top 4 is the same exact alt art cards, but it has a little top 4 brand on it. And the finalists get an invite to World Champ, I believe, in 2019. So those prizes are pretty cool. How do you guys feel about them? Did you like them? Were you impressed by them? Disappointed?
I like it. I like the fact that they're going with the starter characters. It's a little concerning that there's no participation prize listed here. I mean, talking about. I mean, I know it's a upper end, premier event, so nothing's guaranteed. But it would be nice to have like maybe this Boba and Luke just be the participation prize as opposed to the top 64, because it's nice because they're starter characters. So you would assume that a lot of the newer players are going to start with these characters, and they're both relatively powerful, so that they can both see play and be relevant in a meta. So I think it's a good selection of cards, but I wish they had pushed it down below 64. The artwork is great on everything, though. Preemptive Strike isn't my favorite choice. I would have loved to have seen whatever it is, the Profitable Connections instead of that. Fortify's wonderful. I love the shield tokens. The mat's beautiful. I like it. I think the stuff looks good.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're solid. I like one thing I really like is the like top 4 with like the golden brand. They did that at Worlds with the Worlds icon on the like spot glass Kanan, and I think that's cool because like a lot of people get the alt art, but then like only a handful of people get the like trophy piece / super notable version. And kind of going back to everything we talked about earlier, I would love to see these bigger events push the prizes, at least certain amount of the prizes lower, where it is less about who's winning and more about participating. But at the same time, you definitely, for a big event like a Nationals, you want there to be those elusive, exclusive prizes that people fight to get.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they look awesome. I think the only thing I might nitpick would be the same thing that Tommy said of the Profitable Connections over Preemptive Strike, simply because Profitable Connections, it just sees, more play. I don't really know that any like Top Deck or anything like that would really want to run Preemptive Strike. So it might just see a little bit less play, but still looks really great. But for the top 4, I do love the emblem on there, as you said, but I kind of wish that they were like maybe different arts. To me, because I mean, it's cool, but part of me is just like, it kind of looks weird having the same old art as the, if you come top 4, you still get the same old art as a, I guess, what was that, top 64? So you could get the same old art, the 64th finisher, but yours just has a little emblem on it, which still is cool. But like I said, I wish it was just a little bit different.
Well, it's also spot glass instead of just a regular card, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Made from plastic, durable, spot gloss, and foil stamp to commemorate your top 4 finish.
Yeah, I mean, I get it both directions. Like,
yeah,
tying it together like that, at least you always know where the alt art came from. But at the same time, it is something that's like different and more rare. So I can go either direction. I don't think it's that huge of a deal either way. But I really dig the spot glass they're giving away at Gen Con, which is the like very minimal Ray Kylo double-sided.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the best prize from Gen Con by far.
Yeah, no, not even close.
Yeah, I've been hoping that they would do a Ray 2 art soon, but it stinks I can't go to Gen Con, so I might have to just, I don't know, see how much they go for on eBay, because that looks so good. But yeah, as one thing, I guess, how did you feel Worlds did with, reaching down for prizes? I guess, I don't really know how else to say it, but I thought they were pretty good with, a majority of people walking away with some type of prize.
Yeah, I mean, everyone got the Altar Palpatine. Anyone that went 3-3 got the Kanan. Anyone that goes 4-2 got some tokens. My only any sort of complaint at all about Worlds was ultimately like using the not carried over strength of schedule for the cut, and then you have a bunch of people at X and 2 who don't make it just because of randomness. Especially with Destiny, I mean, it's a really short game. I understand when that kind of stuff happens with like X-Wing, because adding an extra round takes so long, but I'm pretty sure the math worked out where like if they'd played one more round of Swiss on day 2, no one doesn't make the cut off of strength of schedule, or just have the top 32 all make it and have one extra round of elimination. It doesn't add, that much time. And I think it's way better for everyone. Cause like, my little brother, Tim, went 4-2 on day 1 and 3-0 on day 2 and still didn't make the cut. And like, he played on, I think, Friday, and then waited around till Sunday to play 3 rounds of Destiny, done in an hour and a half, and then out.
Yeah, that definitely feels bad, because then even like the side events on Sunday, were during the 3 rounds of Swiss. So it's not like you could have been done and then played the multiplayer event during the top cut.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, yeah, you played 3 rounds and then that was it. And definitely going 3-0 on day 2 and still not making it definitely feels pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, and especially when like literally adding a round of Swiss means no one does that, right? I mean, you still have to win your next round, but like you literally eliminate that period for another 35-minute round of Destiny.
That's their big problem right now. Me and Scott have had this conversation 100 times about just adding that one extra round of Swiss. They've been doing this at almost every major event. I think at Gen Con this past year, they did that, where they probably should have been an extra round. I think even by their tournament documentation, it warranted an extra round, and they just didn't do it anyway. And then I think they did one extra round at nationals or something like that, but then they cut the top 8 as opposed to the top 16. It's always screwy. I think that we just need to I hope that they can, wrap their head around the math a little better, maybe do a little bit more work on it and just kind of figure it out, because getting cut by strength of schedule, it's such a feel bad experience. I know all too well about that. I've been on both sides of just sneaking in and just missing cut, and it's a terrible feeling.
For sure. I mean, I went to nationals last year in Nova in DC, and I lost my first game against a Maz player, and he actually milled me. It was the weirdest game I've ever played. But then I actually won out and didn't make the cut. And the guy I lost to was the 1 seed going to the top 8, because they cut to a top 8 and there were like 140 players there or something like that.
It should have been cut to top 16. I have no idea what they were doing there.
So, I mean, it is what it is, but it's funny because it's like they do have some tournament rules and then they don't even follow it sometimes. So, if anything, that's what I'd like to see. I thought the prizes were really good. I thought the prize wall was great. I thought the side events were great. I thought they did a really good job across the board. Those battle droids were sick. I thought that was one of the coolest prizes that they've done. I thought the playmats were really good. Maul was solid. I thought the Sabine Darksaber was good for people that watch the show. So yeah, I mean, in general, I thought Worlds was great on all those fronts. It's just the kind of structure of tournament that continues to be weird.
Agreed. That just about does it for our show. Zach, as we wrap up, if people want to learn more about what you're doing in Tulsa at Team Covenant, is there like a way to find you, a good channel to follow or anything like that? Any plugs you want to give?
Sure. You can obviously catch us on teamcovenant.com. If you're curious about our league and our store and stuff, hit the visit page. I've actually also started streaming from our Facebook page, facebook.com/teamcovenant, on Wednesday nights at 6:30 from our Star Wars League night. I was here every Wednesday playing Destiny anyway, and I was like, hey, I'm interested in streaming. Why don't we do that? And so we did. And I'm also going to start posting like a weekly blog that basically embeds that stream and whatever deck list I'm playing and that kind of a thing. So if you're interested in watching some Destiny or just checking in on the Tulsa community, you can check us out on Wednesday nights. And then other than that, you can hit teamcovenant.com and find links to any number of things that we do.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'll definitely, in the description, if anybody's looking for them, I'll have a link to Team Covenant website and also the YouTube page for another way to find some of the content for you. I can also put the Facebook on there too, so they can catch your streams as well.
Yeah, I mean, if they're looking for it, it's pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
You search Team Covenant, you'll get there.
Yeah, you guys are pretty big enough that you'll be the first thing.
Fortunately, we been around for like over 11 years now, which is crazy. But still feels like Tabletop and us aren't the biggest fish in the sea. So we'll see where we get.
You guys are certainly getting there. Definitely one of the biggest names currently, especially in the Destiny world. You guys are definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest. But Zach, it was an absolute blast having you on. Again, thank you for rescheduling so both of us could go see Solo and being flexible with that.
Thank you so much, and thank you for not spoiling Solo for me, and thank you for not being Shane.
Well, I'll do my best to keep not being Shane. Be sure to send him my regards. Appreciate you guys having me on. I'm, like I said at the start of the show, huge fan of community-driven content. I think it's a necessary and important and critical part of the entire community-driven game ecosystem. So keep it up. Keep doing what you do. And if anyone listening or if you guys see me or run into me at an event, be sure to say hi. I'd love to say hello and meet you. And huge shout out to the entire Destiny community for all their support and kind words. Nothing we do for Destiny in any game that we do is possible without everyone in the community. So big shout out to everyone. And, honestly, just thank you for being such a great community. It's a real treat. Just as a lifelong Star Wars fan and tabletop gamer, getting to actively promote and support and grow the Destiny community is really quite an honor. So appreciate everyone out there.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Again, if anybody's looking to check Zach out, that is Team Covenant. And of course, with us for Golden Dice, we are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We've got a WordPress going, so you can check out for documents that we've been writing. Not really documents, articles. Shane's been writing them, so you can skip them if you'd like, but I do have a few on there. Tommy's got one. And that just about does it. Thanks for everybody tuning in. I think my favorite part of the episode was that, for me at least, Tommy's mic sounded weird halfway through, and I didn't tell him because he sounds extremely funny. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll check you next time.